Hopefully all know. Today I'm joined by a crafter, journalist, and PhD candidate in Arctic studies.
In the Arctic, freezing temperatures, excellent preservation. That's why I was very happy to come on this show, because I think it's an excellent initiative. If our research isn't benefiting humanity and isn't benefiting society, then why are we doing it?
We will be arrested. Hello everyone, and welcome to Weekend Talk, the show that brings professionals in cultural heritage directly to you. As always, this episode is brought to you by Save Cultural Heritage Group. I'm your host, Megan Komoric, and I am an archaeologist and Egyptologist currently based in London. Today, I am joined by a crafter, journalist, and PhD candidate in Arctic studies who's exploring identity, interaction, and worldview through the use of microwear analysis of the Dorset culture in the central Canadian Arctic. Here to tell us more about that and then some. Hello, Matilda. Welcome to Weekend Talk.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Come back anytime. So for you and for those who are watching, this episode, as always, is split up into 3 segments. We will have an introduction followed by a quick Q&A. Then we're going to play a fun game. We'll keep this a surprise to the audience, but I know you'll be excited about it. And then finally, we'll just roll out the red carpet for you to tell us where to find you on social media, any upcoming projects, or anything else in between that you want to give a shout out to. Sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Perfect. Well, then tell us more about you, Matilda.
Yeah, well, it's always funny hearing yourself introduced. And you think, oh, yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff. But I'm one of those terrible people that can never say no to things. If something sounds interesting, I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, let's do that. But indeed, predominantly doing my PhD at the moment in archaeology and Arctic archaeology, as you mentioned. And my specialization in terms of archaeology is microwear analysis, which you also talked about. For those who aren't sure what that is, I basically use microscopes to look at those traces that are invisible to the naked eye, which tell us clues about how objects in the past were made and used. So gives you a bit more of an in-depth study rather than just looking at something and saying it's a needle. You can look at something and say how it was made, what kind of tools we used to make it, what maybe mistakes were made. Those are my favorite parts, where you see the mistakes that people make during manufacture. Makes me feel better whenever I try and make my own things as well, because I think it's fine. People have made mistakes for thousands of years. It's okay. You can see what kind of materials they were used against. You can see if they were handled, which are also very cool, and how, in what different ways they were used. And the reason that I'm specializing in the Arctic is to be honest, it started more as a matter of convenience, because in order to do that sort of analysis, the objects have to be very well preserved, because you have to be able to see those microscopic traces, right? They can't have any kind of degradation or anything like that on them. So, and in the Arctic, freezing temperatures, excellent preservation. So that's how that kind of started. And now indeed, I love the region and the area. It's a fantastic place to do archaeology, also because you get to work with the Inuit who are up there as well. So it's a really great way to kind of collaborate. And it was a very interesting, as someone coming from the more European archaeological side of things, I must say, in my background, it was very interesting to have that perspective as well. So that's my kind of day-to-day job, indeed. What's paying the bills is doing that kind of research. So basically trying to use this more in-depth research method to look at objects that have been looked at before, but not in quite this level of depth. So that's the day-to-day job. You mentioned the journalism as well, because I am interested in sort of science communication side of things. And I think it is important to communicate archaeological research to the broader public. A lot of people don't know what exactly it is we do. So, and that's why I was very happy to come on this show, because I think it's an excellent initiative. And so I have a postgraduate degree in journalism, and try to fit that in alongside, although I admit my article writing has been lax as of late, but I do like a podcast for the Experimental Archaeology Society, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and try to do indeed the Instagram and sort of social media outreach, shall we say, for archaeology. So, and through that, I also indeed, my crafting comes into it, because it's fun, you know, and you can relate it back to the past. And so I guess, in summary, very short summary of me and what I do on a day-to-day basis.
No, I think it's actually incredible. And I mean, even though you're like, oh yeah, I just craft because it's, it's fun, it's what we do. It does very much relate into everything. I mean, we as humans love to craft and make things, and it's always nice. Like I follow you on social media, and it's really great to see how your projects can sometimes tie into artifacts that you're talking about. You'll be like, oh yeah, I'm looking at this certain object, and then the next episode of whatever video you just made, you're like, also I did this art piece or something. And I'm like, wow, that actually correlates really nicely. And I think it goes to show, I think you'll get this question a lot, is why do we study the past? Or like, why is this important? And I think by showing how your life blends seamlessly almost into what you're researching, it goes to show that is relevant, that it is something that we still do as humans. We're just kind of learning more about it from the past.
Exactly. And I think that's indeed like one of the things that I like about social media, for example, as a method for doing that, is that you can relate it to things that you do or that people do. Because if people don't engage with something, then obviously they won't think it's important or they won't understand it. So you have to kind of make it engaging, which admittedly for something like, well, I say for something like archaeology, but obviously we have the kind of romantic notion around it. So a lot of people are interested in it already, luckily, but it's kind of getting away from the what everyone thinks they know and the stereotypes, and still making the other aspects of it more interesting. So hoping they come for Indiana Jones, but they stay for the microwear, you know.
I mean, of course. I think all of us as kids at one point just wanted to have a microscope or a magnifying glass to look at so much detail. And it's really cool that you do it in your research. I mean, how did you even find yourself doing that in the first place? What really brought you to it?
It was actually quite accidental, if I'm honest. So I was actually, it's funny, I originally started university doing film, which also probably explains why I'm interested in journalism and that side of things as well. And I just ended up falling in love with archaeology somehow. A friend of mine was doing a course in it, and I was hearing all about like, what, you're talking about human evolution and all the, wow, that sounds amazing. Let me do this course as an elective. Loved it, and then switched to archaeology. And so it's a very general course, and it introduced you to all different aspects of things, which is nice if you're getting started in archaeology. But I was always really drawn to the sort of the archaeological science side, and especially the artifacts, because I mean that's the majority of what we find at archaeological sites, right, is the artifacts. But how much they could tell us, you never realize how actually important objects are. I mean, I sit here surrounded by them, right? I mean, they're such an essential part of who we are as humans, and I think they're just really fascinating to look at. And so I decided, okay, I want to get involved in that, in sort of artifact analysis, because also I love fieldwork, but I have to say I'm the kind of archaeologist that loves doing it for one season and then having a couple of years off and then going again for another season just to keep my hand in. But a lot of my colleagues are, I can't wait to get back in the field, and I'm happy for them to go back. I'm good in the lab. I really like working in the lab, and indeed working with artifacts. And so I decided to specialize in artifact analysis. And so the next stage, I did a master's then, and at Leiden University in the Netherlands. And there it just happened to be that if you were specializing in sort of material culture studies and archaeological science, from the artifact perspective, so you could do bioarchaeology, osteo, etc. But from the material culture perspective, it was either kind of more scientific analysis, so looking at so XRF, X-ray fluorescence, and the chemical side of it, or microwear analysis. So those were the kind of two specialisms that they had. The professor who's there is Anne-Lou van Gijn, is an expert in that, very experienced. So it kind of, it looked cool, and I really enjoyed it. It's really like detective work almost, because you're looking at these traces and going, oh, how could that possibly have happened? And so it is a creative process as well. It's not just scientific. It's sort of a nice mix of science and creativism, I think. So.
A little bit of detective work as always.
Oh, so great. Put my Sherlock Holmes hat on.
Yes. It like ticks all the boxes then, because as kids you're like, oh, what do you want to do? And it's like, oh, I want to like exploring old things. Okay, tick. Archaeology. Or I also want to be a detective. Okay, tick. I also want to be an adventurer, and you're like, well, do you try to venture inside an archive to do lab work? That's an adventure in
definitely,
itself.
Yeah. Some of the boxes you uncover, you're like, wow, this doesn't correspond to the catalog at all. Okay.
I think it's a big thing too currently. I know a lot of people that we've talked to in the past on this show have brought up this idea of like, field work is great. I love field work. I'm obviously an archaeologist. But it's almost a crime to keep going back and excavating and taking out new stuff when we have so much in archives that needs to be researched. Yeah. And it's cool to see that people reanalyze these objects, and then you kind of come in, you're like, okay, you've now reanalyzed them. Now I'm going to do like a bigger deep dive into this artifact. I can show you like a minuscule fingerprint on the inside of this vase or something, let's say, or I can look at the exact material of what this was made from. And I think that's really important to look at, is that re-examination.
Yeah, and it's also, indeed, it's a nice way to try and, I mean, for example, some of the material that I'm looking at was excavated in the 1950s, which was kind of, especially in the Arctic peak area of, hey, I'm a person coming in, taking artifacts and going out again, and so it's a kind of way of trying to decolonize the process a little bit by re-looking at them and giving that back a little bit rather than them just sitting in storage. Indeed, I mean, there's a lot there, and it is true. Fieldwork does bring a lot. Obviously, there's new questions to ask, so new approaches to make. And the nice thing, one thing that I'm definitely missing from this older material is the lack of context, for example, because in that time, they didn't think to always put in the nice stratigraphy and where they were in the site and everything. So you just have 1,000 needles and think, great, cool, okay. Whereas now, obviously, the methods have improved. So there are definitely pros of doing fieldwork now. But indeed, I think it's nice to use the information that we have already and not just let stuff sit in a museum and gather dust.
Just because we don't have context for it doesn't mean we just have to chuck it aside and say, well, now we can't research it, it's not relevant. There's still things we can learn, even though it might not be like the greatest, but I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say then, with all these artifacts and objects that you're looking at, what has been your favorite type or like your favorite one to research?
I have to say, for me, even though I'm a big believer in not necessarily having to understand everything that happened in the past, because let's face it, we don't have time machines. There's some things that we can say, yes, this is what it was used for, but we're basing it on evidence, objective evidence, hopefully. But at the end of the day, it is our interpretation of how things happen. But at the same time, I love mystery objects and things that, trying to work out what they mean and, all of these kind of things. I mean, you've probably seen on my Instagram, I quite often feature them because I just find them so fascinating, and it's so fun to think of all the possibilities, even though we'll never know. That kind of is a nice thing, I think, to have that. It almost takes the pressure off, because you're like, oh, but this is what I believe it is, and I base it on this evidence. But feel free to reinterpret and feel free to think outside the box and all these things. So there's these very cute little objects, for example, in Arctic assemblages, and they're known as spatulas. Why exactly, who knows? They do look a bit like spatulas. They're sort of long and thin, and then with like a flattened bit on one end, and they've got a little hole. And they're one of these things that no one really knows what exactly they were used for. They come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Usually they're small, but sort of within that section, little shapes. And sometimes the hole is that way, sometimes it's that way, sometimes there's a little polar bear head on the end, and all these kind of things. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to dedicate enough time to them during my PhD, but I'm hoping in future that maybe I might be able to look at them a little more detail in terms of useware to really try and work out. But the problem is, as I'm sure you're aware, but for those listening, with microanalysis, is that you obviously have to base your identification of the traces on something. So you can't just say, oh, well, this was clearly used on wool, if you don't know what it was used for. So in order to do that, you do a lot of experimental archaeology. So for example, at the moment, I'm looking at needles. So I'm doing lots of different sewing. I'm sewing all kinds of different skins and from different materials and everything. And then you build up a reference collection of nice images of traces that then you can compare with those on the archaeological pieces to say, well, these look very, very similar. And this one I sewed material X with, therefore it's very likely, again, you can never prove anything, but it's very, very likely that this was also used to sew that. So the problem with the spatulas would be that I'd have to do a lot of experiments with a lot of different things, because we don't really know what they were used for, which would be really interesting. So it'd be nice to chat to lots of different people and get their perspectives on what they think it was made for, and then I can incorporate them into experiments. But yeah, so that would be, I guess, my current favorite of the material I'm looking at personally. I think those are my favorite artifact type, probably the spatulas.
That's an amazing answer. I love it. It's just the mystery of it all. It doesn't have to be, in someone's opinion, the coolest artifact, but it's just that drive and the thrill of you get to kind of go through and discover something, or just be even more perplexed. And I think that's just fun.
Yeah, because I mean, there's beautiful objects as well. I mean, the figurines that they created, especially the Dorset or Tunit culture that I'm looking at, their carvings are amazing. If you look at any kind of Paleo Inuit is the phrase we use, carvings, then they're likely to come from that period, just because their skills were fantastic. And there's little polar bears and little, it's beautiful. Like they're gorgeous, and so they are beautiful. But they're pretty things. But if you don't know what this weird little spatula is, like, that to me is more exciting. I mean, that's why we get into what we do, right? Is not necessarily for the fancy treasure; it's for the little things that you don't really know what they are.
I mean, they're my favorite kind of objects to collect. I like when people come over and they're just like, what in the world did you just buy? And I'm like, that's the answer I want.
Exactly. What do you think it is?
Start analyzing what they're thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's like a great segue into, like, obviously, like you said, you are on social media and you're trying to get people interested in the less romanticized or glamorized side of archaeology. And you said it really well. It's sometimes it's nice and the pressure's off of you when there is no direct answer. Like, you can't say without like definitively that yes, this is a thing. What has been your experience being a part of like the academic archaeological Instagram side of things when it comes to interacting with the public?
It's actually, so it is funny actually. For example, I had one post about actually I have an example, I've got all these examples here, and this is the main one, the Scottish carved stone balls, which are these really cool little objects. Again, no one has any clue what they were possibly used for. There's been like 400 of them found. They're all different designs, and if you're interested in looking it up, go and look it up, because I could wax lyrical about them for ages. But I had posted about them, and I explained that, you know, we don't know what they're used for and that kind of thing. And it was really interesting, because you got a lot of people obviously then giving their suggestions, you know, and saying like, oh, well, surely they were used for this, and surely they were used for this kind of thing, which, you know, it like is nice, because of course we all have to brainstorm and everything. And then you had some people who are very strongly opposed to the fact that we should, you know, be giving them any kind of definition and everything. So, but I found that it's very, you have so much nice interaction in terms of ideas exchange. But also, for example, I did one on candles, and I had said that the Romans were the first ones to use candles with a what are they called, wick. And the Egyptians used ones with reeds. And then someone had commented on it and said, actually, there's this paper that gives an example of Egyptians using a wick made from thread in this candle, you know, which I didn't know. I hadn't found that paper when I was researching it. And so, you know, I corrected it and made a thing. But it's nice. It's sort of luckily, so far, haven't yet experienced no, you're wrong, it was all this side of thing. You know, it's always been a very open exchange, and it's always been very friendly. And I do indeed have a lot of people who have commented on things saying, you know, but surely it was like this. And I explain, no, actually, we don't know. And they leave saying, oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know. So I think also that's the nice thing with social media, is that you can be on a level with fellow academics, but then you can also be on the same level with people who don't have any archaeological experience, because it's not that you're kind of preaching to them from an ivory tower. You know, you're posting something, they have the power to comment on it and like it or share it, or, you know, all these things. But I think it equalizes you nicely. And I don't know, I was chatting with one colleague about this, and they were saying, yeah, but, you know, I'm not a fancy professor, so who would listen to me on Twitter? I was going, well, that's the point. If your name doesn't matter, it's the content, you know, that's happening. Because if you don't post good content, then no one will care and no one will follow you, even if you're Professor X from, you know, X wonderful university. You know, it has to, I think, yeah, it sort of proves sorry, I'm making this into a mess. It proves the content is more important than the name, if that makes sense, or the kind of hierarchy of the archaeology. So I think that's nice. The nice thing about these kind of academic Instagram and the academic side of social media, which I also didn't know when I started Instagram. I actually started Instagram, I don't know how far back you went in my profile, but basically the start was because I had a small business selling prehistory inspired jewelry that I made, and I started an Instagram account for that to, you know, show the jewelry and everything. And then when I started my PhD, I found a challenge. It was called the Leveraged PhD Challenge. And basically they gave you a word every day, and you had to post about that in relation to your research. And that's how I kind of found the academic Instagram community. So which I didn't know existed, you know. And you say to people, you know, oh, yes, and I do a lot with Instagram, and you can see them going, okay, you know, posting pictures of their food and blah 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 and all the stuff, which, you know, sure, I sometimes also post pictures of the garden, but like, you know, it's I think it's nice that a lot of people don't realize that there's a big scientific communication, like science communication side of it as well, which I think is really nice. Sorry, that didn't really answer the question.
No, that did. That was great. Like, it's some of those things that a lot of people, both academics and just the general public, don't think about. So I think that was great that you worded it the way you did, because I know from personal experience, I've said, oh yes, I have a TikTok, and they're like, oh, so you just like do your little dances up. And I'm like, I mean, those are on there, but I am on academic TikTok, or I'm on like a creative TikTok. So it's not the same thing. But obviously the public, if they're only used to one thing, they're just going to think it's one thing. No. So it's great to see that you've been able to blend all of your interests together. And I'm really curious, obviously now being on Instagram, having this wider network of communication, has it shaped the way that you approach your research at all?
Some ways, yes. I mean, for example, The analysis itself, not really, if I'm honest, because there's sort of a limited amount of doing. But in terms of the research output, I think that, I mean, for example, I'm now trying to think of ways to, I have to, the structure of my PhD, I have to basically write a certain amount of journal articles, peer-reviewed scientific journals, you know, all of this kind of thing. So obviously the language is not quite so approachable as these kind of things, but I'm now thinking, you know, okay, but how can I do that then? How can I publish it both in this way, but then in my final publication, I want anyone to be able to read and anyone to be able to understand, and, you know, that side of things. And definitely in terms of, I mean, my own trajectory in terms of what I'm interested in. I mean, I find this really interesting. This is a really important part of archaeological research. So I suppose maybe not necessarily the research, the analysis, that hasn't changed, but my approach to the project and how I am as an academic, I think has definitely changed. And also how I'm trying to influence all my fellow academics and saying, so what social media platform are you on sharing your research, you know, and trying to make it more normalized. Because also, I mean, as a PhD, I don't know how many people know PhD students or have heard of, you know, people who are PhDs. You probably hear a lot about the, you know, the burnout, the imposter syndrome, all these issues, because we have a lot of things to do. And a lot of times your timetable or your sort of research plan, they don't allocate, you know, 1 hour, 2 hours a week for social media or digital outreach, you know. So it's not thought of, it's not considered an important part of your research process by universities or academics, which is hopefully changing. I really hope it's changing. But so I guess it's changing that mindset and realizing that, no, okay, sure, I'm spending time doing this. Admittedly, a lot of the posts I do aren't specifically related to my research, but I'm trying to incorporate them every so often. But yeah, trying to sort of show that actually it is something that should be a part of research. Like, just because you're a intelligent scientist who can do analysis doesn't mean that you can't also communicate in an engaging and approachable way. Like, I think that that's sometimes a bit of a disparity in a lot of research projects. And so I'm trying to change that in mind. So the analysis itself, no change. The mindset, yes, definitely changed.
I think it's important to make, like you said, social media kind of more integrated into the academic experience. Because if you think back to the 1920s, for instance, you have like, oh, King Tut's tomb. The reason they were able to excavate so much and have all the money to do so is because they played to public interest. And now we're saying, okay, maybe, you know, still be obviously respectful and do context analysis, but we should still engage the public, because at the end of the day, if the public's not engaged with us, then our research just going into a book, going into a journal for other future academics to read, to then post their own books or journals to go back into the same library, it's not really going anywhere. And though the information's great, if it's not impacting someone outside your circle, it almost feels like a disservice.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole point, right? I mean, as much as we like to be scientific, we are also a social science, right? Like, that's what the social sciences is what we're called, and the humanities subjects. So if our research isn't benefiting humanity and isn't benefiting society, then why are we doing it in that respect?
Exactly. I guess then I'll have to just end the questions with, like, it's a new year, new you, new year, new social media content. What are you kind of hoping to accomplish this year? Like, what is your goal, either with your research, with your Instagram, your podcast, for instance? What are you looking forward to?
Well, the research, I mean, the PhD, I'm actually in the last year of now. So hopefully finishing will be the goal at the end of this year, which would be very exciting. COVID has put a bit of a dent in progress, as with everyone, I guess. But so that's the kind of plan for the thesis, and the PhD project is to wrap it up, which hopefully happens. And yeah, in terms of sort of my work on Instagram and things, I'm hoping to try and the little videos that I do, they're just very short ones. I would love to expand that out a little bit more. People seem interested in the objects, so maybe at some point down the line I might start doing longer videos on YouTube or something like that, and start doing a bit more of a kind of, I guess more communication on that side of things. And yeah, with the podcast as well, I just, I'm very interested in it. I think it's very important to do, and I think it's also nice to have I'm very lucky in that I am an archaeologist, but I also have that journalism experience, so I do have the best of both worlds, so I can combine them, which is nice, because I think people who are interested in science communication aren't always scientists, or people who are scientists aren't always interested in the other way around. So I think it's nice to hoping to exploit that combination in myself a little bit, and be able to hopefully maybe help other projects as well, who might need some help. So that's the plan, I guess. Very vague, I know, but I'm trying not to plan too much in case I get disappointed, but that's the goal.
No, that's honestly an excellent plan. And I hope that people that are watching know that obviously they don't have a background in journalism, but they like artifacts and they have a history of being able to, be academic and they're studying. Well, then please share stuff. Don't worry if you're not good in front of the camera,
Yeah.
or vice versa. If you're great on the camera and you have these interests, show them, because obviously people are interested and you never know, that could just take one person to watch your video and it changes everything that we know.
Or collaborate as well. I mean, there's,
Like
get two people who one's the, the and the other one's the, and yeah, you have the perfect combo.
Exactly. Two humans can make one excellent presenter.
Exactly.
Well, then I think we should then move on to our gaming section. So everyone stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so entertainment segment, we are going to play a quiz game surrounding one of your favorite things, tea. All things tea. So it's the Tea Time Quiz with Safe Culture Heritage Group and Matilda, of course. So are you excited?
I am. I've never been excited.
That's the best kind of feeling, honestly. If you weren't nervous, I'm not doing my job right. Cool. Okay, well then I guess we'll jump right into it. We'll go to question 1.
This is when I realize how competitive I am.
Exactly.
Like, get full marks.
We'll get this. See. There we go. Can you see that okay? Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then, according to legend, how long has tea been around in China? Was it A, 2700 BCE, B, 2800 BCE, or C, 2900 BCE?
I want to say 2700, so A?
A is correct.
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah. I mean, yeah, cool. Telling you that.
Yeah.
No stress.
Excellent. So I do have some notes on this one. It's kind of interesting. So there's actually 2 legends surrounding it. So you have more of a Confucius legend, which says that the mythical emperor and inventor of Chinese medicine and farming, Shen Yang, was reclining in the shade of a tree one day when a shiny leaf dropped into his cup of boiling water. Convinced that this mixture was not poisonous and instead having healing properties, they took a sip and the rest is history. But of course, we also have a different account because everyone wants to have that first account. It's actually a Chinese Buddhist story where it was a young monk. He fell asleep while meditating and woke up very mad that he couldn't reach nirvana, that his body had failed him, that he had fallen asleep. So apparently, out of pure rage, he ripped his eyelashes out and threw them to the wind. And where they fell on the ground sprouted the tea bush. And I'm like, okay, I guess that helps him never fall asleep then. Caffeine.
True. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's one way of putting it. 2 very different approaches, though, indeed, to tea. One is just like angry drinking, and the other one's more.
One is just, oh yes, it's fine. This won't kill me. And the other one's just like, I don't care if it kills me. Just take my eyelashes.
I mean, yeah, that could have been a very different story for the first one. Tea.
Question number 2. Then, are you ready?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, question number 2. Known as the Great Company commit corporate espionage when they sent Robert Fortune to steal the secrets of tea horticulture and manufacturing in China. Was it A, 1782, B, 1800, or C, 1848?
Ugh, this is a couple of thousand years too recent for me, really, Ham. But oh gosh, I guess. I'm just guessing with this one. C, 1848.
It is 1848.
Really?
Yeah, you're doing so good. It's very interesting because, like, obviously, British people have been drinking tea a lot longer than that, but they actually didn't know how to really make it themselves properly. They didn't know how to manufacture it. So, yeah, they sent some guy in, just a little tiny disguise, walked into the manufacturing, was able to discover how they did it, took it back to England, and we've been producing that ever since.
That is hilarious. So funny. Yes, that's great. So the only reason why we're known as like the tea drinking nation is because some guy in like a moustache and dark glasses was in a little warehouse one day back in 1848. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I loved that story. I'm just like, I couldn't imagine. Like, obviously, the British love their tea, and they're like, "Yes, we have done a thing." And I'm like, "Yes, you have donned your little mustache and have gone somewhere."
About to say the typical British approach back in the day to say like, "Yes, look, this is ours." And,
yeah, I mean, the only reason they don't have the Great Pyramids is because they couldn't take that with them. So they got the tea.
Not that we're being political here or anything,
No, it's not. No, I mean, I live in England. It's fine. But so far, so good. Okay, 2 for 2. Are you ready for your third
Exciting.
question?
Yeah, now I'm really
Okay,
nervous.
third one. This one's very short. So third question is, where did tea bags
Ooh.
originate? Is it A, in China, B, in England, or
Ooh.
C, the USA?
I would say either England or the USA, but let's go USA. See?
3 for 3. So the story behind this one is in 1908, a New York tea merchant by the name of Thomas Sullivan was sending samples of their tea to his customers in little silken bags. And people then just got this idea of, oh, put that in my water. And he was like, oh, okay, that works too. Cool.
Oh, it's really interesting. I wonder when do you know when the tea sieve was introduced?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
I should
that's
have put
really
that
curious.
in the quiz. If anyone knows,
I
put
don't know,
that
I'm
in the
afraid.
comments below.
Yeah, if anyone knows, because I know that I guess in a lot of places it's still common to just have it with the tea leaves loose in the bottom, but then at some point someone must have, but I wonder if that was well, it must have been post if it was sort of accidental with the bag. So at some point then someone leapt on that idea and went even further.
Someone was like, I want to transport my tea. There we go. We're done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now it's in so many homes. It's kind of impressive that just one accident can then become mass manufactured like that.
It's great. I mean, so many things, right? I did a video on cutlery the other day, and it's crazy that something that's such an essential, you don't have any house without some form of cutlery or flatware or chopsticks or anything like that. And wasn't actually, it's fairly recent actually, the thing. So
Yeah, it works.
yeah.
Amazing. So 3 for 3. We have 8 total. So ready for number 4? We're halfway there almost.
Oh, I better get over 50. I need to pass.
Okay, well, this one is the oldest printed recipes for iced tea date back to when? Is it before the Civil War in the 1860s, the late 1870s, or the 1950s?
It's one of those things that you'd think it would be a fairly recent thing because it's such like a modern idea, but then just because of that makes me want to say before the Civil War. So hey, because I feel like it might be older than we think it is.
Very close. It is B. It's the late 1870s. I know.
No. Still old.
It's fine. It's still old, yeah. Apparently, the 2 earliest cookbooks with iced tea recipes are one called the Buckeye Cookbook by Estella Woods, and that was published in 1876. And then we also have Housekeeping in Old Virginia by Marion Cabell Tyree, and that was in 1878. And I like that people were making recipe books being like, here's your iced tea recipe, enjoy, be refreshed.
Yeah. Although I do wonder then when iced tea started being made, because of course a lot of the time you don't see it written down until quite a long time after it had already started. So that would also be.
You were probably right with like when.
Right? Yeah. This is just me trying to be like, no, I'm actually correct.
I'll give you half a point. Oh, well, that was good so far. Okay, number 5 then. Here we go. Tibetans. Yes, we're talking about Tibetans, and they like to add a certain things to their black tea. What is that? Is it A, milk and sugar, B, lemon juice and honey, or C, yak milk and salt?
Milk and sugar and lemon juice and honey, yak butter and salt. Ooh, see, just that I feel like the yak butter has been put in there to throw me off, but I don't know. I want to go with milk and sugar. Hey.
The yak milk was correct.
Oh, I was too cynical. Too cynical.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. I was like, I mean, I can't knock it till I try it, but I know butter can naturally sweeten coffee.
But also
I guess
salt
butter could be the same.
Must be.
Yeah, I guess like if you think salt can sweeten watermelon, so maybe it does something with coffee.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Huh? Interesting.
Oh yeah. If next time you eat a watermelon, sprinkle salt on it. It makes it very sweet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that now. Next time I get a watermelon.
Some things on this, it says, though it is consumed by countries throughout the Himalayas, it is said that this drink is not only the national drink of Tibet, but also Tibetans reportedly consume up to 60 cups a day of this.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I assume as well these are like cups rather than like thimbles or something.
Yeah, but, wow. Like, this is my fairy cup, it's
fine. Yeah. God, 60 cups and then with yak butter and salt in as well. Okay.
That'll be all my calories for the day.
I know. Well, I guess they, there's high altitude, a lot of cold. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well then we're gonna go on to a true and false for number 6. Are you
ready?
Okay, you have 1 of 2 chances here. So it's true or false. You can make tea using olive leaves.
Olive leaves. False?
True.
No.
I know. It's fine.
I'm now overthinking everything.
Just go with your heart. Let it go.
I know. Fine. It's like true, but no, it can't be true. Maybe they're poisonous or something. No. Oh, okay.
No, surprisingly not. Olive leaves were first used medicinally in ancient Egypt, and they've been infused into tea-like drinks throughout various cultures, but especially in the Mediterranean and Italy, where olive tea apparently is a thing more widely consumed. And I thought that was very cool because I don't go to a store ever and see olive tea.
Yeah. And you have all sorts of bizarre flavors. I mean, I have a whole wall of bizarre flavored teas, but yeah, olive tea. Haven't seen that one. I have to try that at some point. Too many probably. I've limited myself by putting shelves up, but then now the problem is that I'm like, but I can squeeze another one in on the end of the shelf. Maybe I should have more shelves, but it's nice, to have a bit of more choice.
Yeah, always. You can never have too much choice.
No, exactly.
No, all right. Okay, so number 7. We're almost there. Almost at the end. You're surviving. This one is, I know you'll get this one. It says, A, tasseography, B, tasseomancy, or C, all of the above.
Oh no. See, I was like, B, it has to be tasseomancy. And then I was like, all of the above. It could be all of the above. Now you're making me think again. No, I'm going to go with tasseomancy.
All of the above.
No.
When in doubt, all of the above.
I know. Oh, I should have just done it. When in doubt, pick C.
Exactly. I mean, bubble answer C, C, C. Someone's like, why is it all C? I was just always in doubt.
Yeah.
And the professor's like, it's fine, I was too. We'll see. Information with this one says tea reading followed the trade routes of the tea and coffee industry, and it was practiced by both Baltic and Slavic nations. In the West, tea reading can be linked to medieval Europe, where fortune tellers developed their readings from splatters of wax, lead, and other molten substances. And then, of course, they saw the tea reading and they decided, oh, I like to splatter things anyway, so let's just splatter tea. The rest is history.
A lot healthier than splattering lead as well. Then reading that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to do that again. I mean, what again?
Can you do that again? Even is the question. Probably not. Probably don't live long enough to do it again.
So true. Okay. Well then, last one. Here we go. Question 2. Bolivia, Argentina, and Ecuador. What controversial tea is usually recommended to tourists to help prevent altitude sickness, especially in the Andes? Is it A, coca tea or mate de coca? B, yerba mate, or C, cascara, or a coffee cherry tea? And the key is controversial. Like this is and legal. There's a reason that it's not legal everywhere.
Legal in Colombia. Yerba mate. I haven't heard of yerba mate. Coca tea. Oh, is it A?
It is A. So I worked in Peru, and I remember being like, "Oh, okay, I can drink this." Because people who are watching, I will not say it, but it's something that is made of leaves.
I was thinking chocolate. I have to say, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like chocolate." And I was like, "Wait, it's not choco."
Yeah,
got it.
So it does help with elevation sickness. When I heard that really helped, can't actually import that in. Like if you do buy to the US, especially, or like the UK, you will be arrested. And if you're randomly drug tested after having consumed this tea a week before, you will also be arrested. So I was told I couldn't have that before coming back.
Right.
But yeah, they love it. They drink it, and for them,
it doesn't have any kind of adverse effects or anything on. Not interesting.
Not that's really been noted. So I'm like, I think it's mostly because of how it's made and how it's produced. So it's not refined like what we're thinking.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Interesting.
You did a quiz.
I got less than 50%. So disappointing.
That's okay. You got 0.5 on one of them.
No, that's true. Just because I argued with the teacher. For this.
I'll give you a point for arguing with yourself at one point. You passed.
Yay.
When in doubt, pass your students, or they're just going to keep coming back.
Welcome to academia, children.
Now get your grade and get out. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. Academia is amazing.
It is. It's lovely. It is nice.
It is. Thank you so much for doing that game with me. I hope now you can take some tea facts back with you the next time you have another cup of tea.
Definitely. Thinking of now future videos. I need to do one on the tea sieve. I'm thinking I'll have to do some more research on that.
I'm expecting a tea series very soon.
Yeah. No, I mean, I should, right? Yeah, because it's called the Archaeologist Teacup, but yeah.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, this was incredible. And now I'm just going to roll out the red carpet for you. Can you tell us what to find you on social media, any projects you want to shout out, and just anything in between?
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much all social media under the name The Archaeologist Teacup. The exact handle is a bit different on each, but if you just search The Archaeologist Teacup, you'll find me. I mainly post through Instagram, but I do some stuff on Twitter occasionally, and I haven't entered TikTok yet. You mentioned TikTok earlier. I feel like I should try and dip my toe into it. It seems like a very scary concept, but I'll get there eventually. And yeah, I guess I can't leave without talking about the podcast that I do, which is with EXARC, which is the Experimental Archaeology Society. We talked a bit about experimental archaeology earlier. It's very exciting. It's the closest you can get to time travel, in my opinion, basically replicating objects and events from the past. And yeah, the podcast that we do looks at different topics each month. So for example, the one coming out this week on Friday, it's released on the first Friday of every month, is all about horses in the past. So if you're interested in that, listen in. The next one's about farming and wheat and those sort of things. There's lots of different topics. We also have a potential upcoming new project from there, which looks at all the different journal articles that are published in the EXARC journal. So it'll be like a kind of news show. I'll be presenting the current research, what's happening these days in experimental archaeology. So if you're interested, do find us. So it's exarc.net is the website that you can look us up on. And yeah, I think that's sort of it. I mean, I have so many people that I'd love to shout out to, but I'm afraid there's far too many. So if you follow me, I'll be shouting them out there. So do have a look there as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Obviously, for everyone watching, if you like this, please hit that like button. If you want to have more episodes like this, do hit subscribe, hit the bell notification. We post every other Friday. And honestly, we have fun here. I think Matilda had fun, if I didn't scare her away with the quiz.
No, not too much. I'll just go and, sit and drink tea and be sad. But I'm now going to go and research everything to do with tea so that next time I'll be fully prepared for all tea quotes.
You've got this. We'll have you back for a whole tea segment. Don't you worry.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you. Honestly, this was amazing. So until next episode, bye everybody.